Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be having this episode where we're going to answer all the questions that we got from parents who are on Technon or are considering using Technon. Mr. John, it's a pleasure to have you again here.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to ask the questions that we got from the parents one by one, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to just explain.
Okay.
So first of all, based on your research, how do you define autism?
I think the most important thing that a parent of an autistic child or an autistic person should realize is that it is not a neurological condition. Science has now pretty much confirmed that it's not solely a metabolic condition, but it's primarily a metabolic condition. Now, I've done almost 50 years worth of research in metabolic syndrome diseases, primarily type 2 diabetes, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. But I was speaking at the C3 U.S. Arab Healthcare Conference in New York, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, give or take a few years. And some people from the University of Wisconsin came up to me after my presentation and asked me if I would speak with them about their findings on autism and what they had. And I had spoken at the conference about metabolic syndrome diseases. And they were trying to develop a blood test for autism. You know, currently the primary way they can diagnose autism is they wait till the child's 5 or 6 years old, and then if he or she exhibits certain symptoms, then they're referred to somebody to give them what's called the CARS scoring test. It's very subjective, and in my opinion, highly inaccurate. There's a lot of people diagnosed with autism that don't have autism.
Yes,
There's
it's overdiagnosed.
a lot of people that don't have autism that that they diagnose as having autism. So they were trying to develop a blood test that would be highly accurate and could be done at a very young age, not 5 or 6. Because we all know now that the earlier you can start intervention, the better your long-term results are. Mm-hmm. So I looked at their research. I spoke with them for over a period of several months. And it's like sometimes in your life, something just hits you and you realize that, hey, God had a design for me. I've been doing 40 plus years worth of research in metabolic syndrome, and now I realize that all that work I was probably doing to work with autism, because you work with type 2 diabetes. Use the example because that's a worldwide disease. You can say anything you want. 2% of people will change. Yeah. They now know that with type 2 diabetes, if you'll do certain things, within 8 weeks, most people will no longer be a clinical diabetic.
Yeah.
2% of people will make those changes. 2%.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I discovered the impact that metabolic health disorders had on people with autism, I had an experience with a young man that just led me down the path where I had no choice but to commit myself to working with autistic people. So I devoted, once, the young man's name was Ethan, once he taught me that these young people, these children and adults, they know something's wrong with them. True. They just can't do anything about it. I mean, my heart just bled for this young man. And I committed every resource, both scientifically and hourly, time, everything, financially, to doing everything I could to support the autistic community and help the autistic community.
Okay, so what does Technon actually do in the body, and how does it work?
Well, we have to realize what actually happens with an autistic child. Because, look, and it's not just autism. Medicine and science now knows that the gut has a major impact on all our health issues. With an autistic person, they have dysfunction in their mitochondria. They have dysfunction with their the bacteria in their gut. We have to realize our gut is it's the university for our brain. It's the memory banks. It's where the signals are created. It's what happens is this: we have the same number of brain neurons in our gut as we have in our brain. We've all heard this saying that I had a gut feeling about that.
Yeah.
You really did,
Yeah.
okay? Because the signal comes from your gut, telling your brain that this is
What
what
to
you're
do.
thinking. Yeah, exactly. Well, the signal comes from your gut that tells you to smile, laugh, raise your left hand, yell, whatever you're going to do. That signal originates in the gut, and it's connected to the brain through the vagus nerve. So you have to, and the vagus nerve is connected to every major organ in the body. But the signals, whatever a person feels or does, how they do it, and everything else, that signal originates in the gut. It goes through the metabolic pathways through the vagus nerve and then to the proper lobe of the brain that tells them what to do. With a normal person, the signal comes out, and I'll just put it in layman's terms, but the signal will come out, and let's say it goes in a straight line to the vagus nerve. This vagus nerve processes, and it comes out in a straight line, and it goes to the lobe of the brain that
Responsible for
for whatever it is the gut's telling you to do. Well, with an autistic person, to use that same type of example, it comes out in a broken line, and it hits the vagus nerve, and when it comes out of the vagus nerve, it's like an explosion of things to do. It's telling them to do 50 things all at one time, and it doesn't know what to do. You know, the child or the person doesn't know exactly what to do because it's getting all these conflicting signals all at the same time. No. But it has to go through the metabolic pathways. So you have to do several things. One, you have to correct the microbiome. You have to heal it. You have to create the right populations of bacteria and enzymes, and you have to create the proper ratios of those bacteria. I'll give you a good example of that most people can understand. There are two very important bacteria populations in the gut, and one is bacteroidetes and one is firmicutes. And these two bacteria populations, we as humans, we developed to where we needed those in a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, the average person on Earth right now has between 1 in 20 and 1 in 80 of firmicutes and bacteroidetes. Now, here's what happens, this that most of us can relate to. If you have too high a population of firmicutes compared to bacteroidetes, instead of being 1-to-1, you and I can sit down and have exactly the same meal, same time, same quantity, everything identical. Mm-hmm. And I'm out of balance and you're in balance between firmicutes and bacteroidetes. I will extract 40% more calories from that exact same meal than you will. So guess who's going to gain all the weight?
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
Okay? That's just one example. Well, same's true. We have trillions of bacteria in our gut. That's just one example. So what we tried to do with Technon is create a natural plant-based formula that helped contribute to the growth of the good beneficial bacteria and, for lack of a better terms, starve to death the non-beneficial harmful bacteria. So that once those come into the proper ratio, one, the proper populations, and then the proper ratios, then the signals that are emanating from the gut, from the neurons in the gut, through the vagus nerve and the metabolic pathways, and then to the brain, can be more clear-cut and more solid lines as opposed to just scattered signals.
So, is it a cure?
No.
It's not a cure.
No. Look, nobody in science really knows for sure everything that causes autism. Okay, we know for a fact that there are certain genes that get passed on from the father. Okay, that increases the predisposition for autism. Okay, if you have these genes, but then something has to trigger the autism. You know, and there's a wide variety of things we've been able to identify. If I was going to express my own opinion, okay, I believe it's the diet of the mother when she's pregnant and when she's nursing. I believe it's when the mother doesn't nurse the child also, like nature intended. And I also, we now know that pollution in the air is a trigger for autism, if you live in an area, I'll give you an example. We've been doing some research in Africa. I mean, this is just an easy, clear-cut example. In many parts of rural Africa, they still cook their food out of open wood fires. Well, those particulates from that type of fire, or the wood they use, definitely does trigger autism in many cases. Okay? So if you live in a city where there's heavy pollution, and I'm just going to use two examples. I'm not pointing fingers at any countries or anything, but India has a heavy pollution issue. China has a heavy pollution issue. Which two countries have the most autistic children in the world? India and China. Okay. So we know that if you live in an area where there's a significant pollution burden, your chances of having an autistic child goes up. Go up. Okay. But as I said, none of us know exactly what causes everything or what triggers it in all cases. I mean, some people claim that vaccines do. Other people say absolutely vaccines don't. Okay. In my opinion, I believe some of them do. But they're not going to trigger it in everybody.
The people that have the
predisposition. Exactly. Okay. Also, because it's a metabolic health issue, the same people who have the predisposition to metabolic diseases such as diabetes, or if they have diabetes, they're more likely to have an autistic child also. We now know that if a mother has gestational diabetes, in I think it's the first 27 weeks. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's what it is, of their pregnancy. If they have gestational diabetes, their chances of having an autistic child goes through the roof. It increases like 40%. Now that's significant. So, but we don't know how to cure it. What Technon does is it provides the proper, healthy way to contribute to the healing of the gut, which is critical, to repopulating the gut and feeding the beneficial bacteria that's in the gut, and essentially starving the non-beneficial bacteria so that those ratios come into balance, so that the signal that comes from the neurons in the gut, as it goes through the metabolic pathways, it's a clear, more balanced signal, goes through the vagus nerve. We strongly promote that you tone your vagus nerve every single day. And look, this is not complex. To tone your vagus nerve, all you have to do is drink cold water during the day. So if you get up in the morning, drink 8-12 ounces of cold water, you've toned your vagus nerve. So the signal come through in a clear way, okay? And then the signal goes to the brain. And instead of it being just a scattering of impulses and signals,
it's going to be regulated.
It's regulated. So what Technon does, it does not cure, but what it does is it mitigates and significantly helps in the management of the symptoms of autism. And that's all the symptoms of autism, whether it's aggressive behavior, sleep patterns, digestive issues, mitochondrial dysfunction, pardon me?
Communication as well.
Communication, cognitive function, verbal skills, okay? All of those things. Look, there's two things that exist in science. I hate to use the word every, okay? Everybody's body's different. Not everybody. Everybody's a little bit different. Not everybody's the same. But what I found is that virtually every autistic person has a significantly disrupted gut, so their digestive issues are off, whether they have diarrhea or they have constipation or they have trouble swallowing or eating this. And they also have significant problems with their sleep patterns. Not all are aggressive. Some are aggressive. Not all are hyperactive. Some are hyperactive. But it will. Not all of them are nonverbal, but some are nonverbal. Technon will help because in healing the gut and in contributing to the correct populations and ratios of those populations of bacteria in our microbiome, where the signals emanate from then you will gradually improve all the symptoms. Now, having said that, some people get tremendous response in 1 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Some people, it takes 3 to 6, 9 months. We've had people take that were nonverbal and very, very, we call it symptoms of aggravated behavior, but it's aggressive, violent symptoms. Okay. We've had them take as long as 13 months, but then be, as long as they stayed on Technon, then be functioning in a virtually normal way. Now, this is a natural nutrition-based formula without any significant contraindications, which I'll explain here in a little bit. But think about any medicine anybody goes on. If you have high blood pressure, if you have high cholesterol, which most adults around the world have those issues somewhere along the line. You have diabetes, another metabolic disorder. When you go on a medication, you're on it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because when you go off of it, your body has a memory, okay? And when it reaches a balance or a plateau that things are functioning correct, and it recognizes, hold it, this is where I'm supposed to be, it does everything it can to maintain that. Well, it needs the medicine to help maintain that because it's lost the ability to do it for itself. With Technon, it's the same. What we found is it's the same. If you go on Technon, everybody's different. Like I said, most people start getting these 3 positive reactions, or they'll see it in one of these 3 or all 3 of these categories within typically 1 to 3 weeks. I mean, some people take a little bit longer, but typically it's 1 to 3 weeks. That's their digestive issues start improving. Their sleep patterns start improving, and they start calming down. Those 3 things happen almost with everybody. Now, having said that, with digestive issues, some of them have constipation. Okay, for sure that'll start improving. Some of them have diarrhea. For sure that'll start improving. But one of the things that Technon does is it detoxifies
Your
the
body.
microbiome, the gut. Okay, it detoxifies it. Now, in that detoxification process, some people will have diarrhea because it's cleansing the body.
Yeah, we had a lot of moms ask this question, like their children got diarrhea,
Yeah.
and is it because of the detoxing?
It is. It is.
How long is it supposed to last?
Okay. Everybody's different. All
Yeah.
right. But typically it'll last 3 to 8 weeks. Remember this. Pardon me?
3 to 8 weeks of diarrhea. It's
Yeah.
a lot on the moms.
You got to keep them hydrated. Okay. But it depends on the condition of the child's gut. The worse it is, the longer the detox process is. The other thing you get,
Makes sense.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
straightforward on that thing. Recognize that since the gut is the memory bank for the brain, the condition of the gut is going to dictate the health of the body and the health of the brain. Now, we know, science knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that if somebody, and I'm just using this because science always before has thought that autism was a neurological disorder. Okay? It's not. It has neurological symptoms, but it is not a neurological disorder. Big pharma, the large pharmaceutical companies have spent billions of dollars and 30 plus years researching autism, try to come out with a treatment. There's not one single successful treatment to date that positively impacts autism.
True.
Okay? Not one.
Yeah.
Yet we can take a child with Technon, and in 1 to 3 weeks, we can definitively measure a minimum of 1 to 3 improvements, and over a greater amount of time. And the length of time depends on the age of the child, and the size. The older they are and the bigger they are, the longer it takes. But we can definitively see improvements in
the first 3
typically
weeks.
in the first 3 weeks, yes. Now, like I said, the one that took us 13 months that was very violent, tearing his own hair out, attacking his grandmother and his mother and his other siblings, couldn't sleep till 4 o'clock in the morning. We started with him when he was 3. He's now 6. He's now 6. And it took us he was nonverbal, completely nonverbal, other than yelling at the top of his
Screaming,
voice.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Highly aggressive. It took us 13 months, and he was talking and functioning. I'll give you an example. Okay, I'm a firm believer in seeing what happens. Yes, look, I'm a researcher. What the facts are is all I care about. If it's not true, I don't want to know. I don't want to know about it. But I want to know that it's not true. But I want to know what's true too. This young man, when I first met him, he's Hunter. In fact, we have a
the flyer.
Yeah, we have a brochure where his mother tells us what's happened with him and so on. When I went to visit this young man and his mother and grandmother, I couldn't find them. This was a neighborhood of a city in southern Florida where they didn't have numbers on the houses, so I couldn't find the house that they lived in. So I parked and just went up and down the street and asked, do you know where this person lives? Anyway, I found their house. And when I came in, of course, it's just bedlam, because this kid is running around screaming. And after he was on Technon, this is in the I actually saw him when he was in the 14th month, but the mother tells me the month before things changed with him miraculously. I'm there and visiting with the mom and the grandmother and with Hunter, and Hunter was sitting down, being calm, sitting just beside it. And when it came time to go, he says, he got up and he says, "Can I go with you to your car?" And I said, "Sure, let's go, Hunter." So we go out the door because I parked a long ways away because I had trouble finding the house. He reaches up and takes my hand. And we walk down the street, this, 2-foot-nothing little boy and we're walking down the street. And he says, "Which car is yours?" And I says, "It's the blue one over there." He goes, "Oh, sorry, it's the white one over there." He says, my grandmother's car is blue." Okay, it's just neat. Give me a good feeling. Yeah. So we go there. He says, "Can I sit in it?" And I said, "Sure." So I open the door and he crawls in. He can't even see over the dash. And he's doing this with the steer. And then he gets out and he looks up and he takes my hand. And I said, "Hunter, I got to go with you to walk you back across the street." And I turn around and I look. The mother's on the other side of the street, just crying her eyes out. Just crying her eyes out. So I walk him across the street and get him to him because, with cars coming home, I'm walking by himself. And he just smiles and reaches up and grabs his mom's hand and they walk back into the house. Those are the reasons we do what we do. That's one of the reasons.
Yeah, because seeing is believing,
Yeah. But I want to say this. I would feel remiss if I didn't do this because I've worked with so many autistic parents and children. What I've come to the conclusion is that too many, and I use the word too many, parents have given up. They're now the roadblock to helping their children because they've given up. They don't believe anything anybody says, including me. They don't believe anything's going to work or help their child. But what I have to say to those parents is, science finds something new every single day for different issues. Okay? Don't close your mind to something because other things didn't work. Yeah. Technon works. It's not going to cure your child, but it's going to give you back, in most cases, it's going to give you back your child's life and your family's life. Because autism, untreated, is a life sentence for the child and for the family.
True. And I think that's why you cannot stop, because we had several mothers saying that they've noticed great improvements and they just want to try to wean their children off.
Okay, here's what we found with the people that do stop it, okay? Apparently, when you have this type of disrupted gut.
And the predisposition as well, that will...
Correct. The predisposition, the genetic predisposition, and I want to say to the audience, all the research we do is genetic based. Mm-hmm. Our website, my business card, our emails, everything is pure life genetics, okay? Everything is genetic based. We know that if they've got the genetic predisposition,
it will come back.
It will come back, right. And we can heal the gut. We can create an environment in the gut, in the microbiome, to where it's healthy. But for some reason, if you stop doing what the gut needs, okay, it comes back. And typically it will return in approximately 5 days. You'll start noticing
5 days.
changes, yes. Look, everybody's body's different. Some people it may be 3, some people it may be 3
But it's
weeks.
days, in a matter of days.
But yeah, it's a matter of days. What we've seen in most of our, all of our proof of concept studies and so on, 5 days. Because what we did with all of them is we did it, the first one we did it for 3 months, and the second one we did it for 6 months. And what we found is when we stopped, because we monitored them all for an additional 3 months or an additional 6 months, what we found is when we stopped, typically the average was about 5 days, the symptoms started returning.
And can you go back on it and overcome this? Or?
Yes, you can. But I want you to realize the second time around, it takes longer.
To achieve the same things.
To get to the same point that they were before, it takes longer than it did the first time.
So don't stop.
Yeah, don't stop.
Technon has been around since 2015, yet there is little online about it. Why isn't it more popular?
I'm going to answer that in as a nice a way as I can, okay? I'll be as least aggressive as I can respond, okay? Anybody that's had to deal with governments to get anything approved, no matter what it is for the health world, nothing goes quickly. Okay, we're based in the United States. We did all our research in the United States, but in the United States, according to FDA regulations, we cannot use the term autism. We can't promote or advertise anything that has to do with autism. So everything has to be done by word of mouth. Now, we do provide it and make it available to physicians, who then prescribe it, which they have the right to do. But we can't put anything out on the internet, or the FDA would be in my office in a matter of a week. Yeah. Okay, I'm wrong. They're a government agency, so it'll probably take 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
But they're going to be there.
But they're going to be there. That's number one. Number two, we do everything by a process. We try to get things registered first. And I'll give you an example. We can sell it in the UAE. Okay, took us 2 years. Took us 2 years from the date we started before we got
to be able to
permission
sell it.
to be able to sell it, to make it in the UAE.
Yeah.
Okay.
So processes and government and legalities and
all the process you go through. So it doesn't matter what country it is. You've got at least a 2-year process to get it registered. So we started in the U.S. So what we did, first of all, we did 2 different proof of concept studies because, quite frankly, it would be pretty foolish to go spend all the time, money and effort and everything we did if we wasn't very, very confident it worked and did the things we wanted it to do. So right there, you've got one that was for 3 months and one that was for 6 months, and then we had to do a 3-month follow-up and a 6-month follow-up after each one. You got 2 years right there. Okay. Then we started the process of having the attorneys. In the U.S., what we do, now you don't have to do this, but this is what Pure Life does. We have a very high-quality boutique law firm that specializes only in FDA, FTC regulatory matters. And we submit all of our formula and the claims we want to make, the statements we want to make, et cetera, to them. And then what they do is they research everything that we submit to them, and then they go interview all of our research scientists. And they validate everything we put down as points of conclusion. Okay? Well, this process takes not quite a year, but almost a year. So from the date we said, hey, Eureka, this is going to work, we can do this, because you do
the
preliminary.
bureaucracy came in place. Yeah.
Then you have to fight the bureaucracy. So for us to get to the point where we market it, it's only been really a year.
Yeah, yeah. But how many children, adults are on Technon since you started?
More than 41,000.
More than 41,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have a really broad scope of people to draw from. That this works, it takes this long, this doesn't work. We have to be careful of this. I mean, we try to look. We're dealing with children, and there's nobody in my organization that doesn't love children. Okay, you couldn't do what we do if you didn't.
Yeah,
okay?
they're working for a cause.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're very cognizant that we don't want to do anything that might possibly cause a irreversible or an issue with any
With a
one of
child.
our patients. Yeah.
One of the moms. Technon is natural, but does it have any side effects at all? Or like, is there anything they should be watching out for, like an adjustment phase, detox, side effects?
Yes, definitely. Here's the typical first contraindication, and really the main contraindication that will come out of virtually everybody. Okay, and that is there will be a significant increase in flatulence. Okay, which is gas. Okay, and the reason is you're affecting the gut. You're changing how the gut is responding to everything that gets ingested. Okay, you're changing the populations, the bacteria and the enzymes, and the ratios of those populations. The typical response for the body is to get rid of that. Now, in most people, that results in flatulence. Now, we talked about it earlier about the detox period. Those with a severely disrupted gut, okay, they all have a disrupted gut, but some are severe, some are in the middle, and some are mildly, okay. Be aware that you are likely to have diarrhea for a matter of weeks. Now, whether it's 2 or 3 weeks or it's 6 or 8 or 9 weeks, really depends on the severity of the disruption. It also depends on the condition of the gut. If they've got a leaky gut, it takes longer because what has to happen is there has to be a certain level of healing of the leaky gut
For it to
start balancing everything. Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So it can take several weeks, but be aware that that's just the detox process.
And if you go on any detox program, you're gonna experience the same, right?
To my knowledge, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some parents see gains in the first 3 weeks, but they notice symptoms like more vocal stimming, scripting, continuous noises, like a little bit of hyperactivity, emotional outbursts. Is this related to their gut being?
Yes, a small percentage of the children have that issue. There are some, because out of all the ones that we deal with, look, of the ones that we deal in the United States that I monitor regularly, I only know of one. Okay, but what is happening is the area of the gut that affects vocalization and so on is more disrupted than other areas. So while that area is being, I'll use the word corrected or balanced, there is going to be more reaction because remember, the gut is still the library for the brain. So when you're changing the gut, you're changing the library and you're changing the frame of reference that the brain gets to use. So there will be some that are more active, hyperactive.
Vocal stimming?
Some can be a little more aggressive and vocal stimming, yes.
But that's a good sign, right? That
It means it's working.
Yeah,
it means
working.
It means it's already started the process in the gut, and the gut has identified where its biggest need is.
There are a lot of questions with regards to certain components in Technon because autism parents put their children on other supplements. So for example, how much omega is in Technon? Should we adjust our other omega supplements?
Okay, I'm going to address that as clearly as I can. There's about 1,500 milligrams of DHA and EPA in Technon. Okay, but omega-3s are necessary to dampen down the inflammation that exists in the gut of every human being, but especially in the gut of an autistic person. All right, so what I recommend is, I'm a firm believer of the concept. If you have a disease or a disorder, and autism is not a disease, it is a metabolic disorder, okay? I'm a firm believer that you should attack it from every avenue you can attack it from. And as long as it's not going to, cause negative contraindications. If your child is on a program, whether it's a probiotic or prebiotic or both or other omega-3s, stay on it. Add Technon to it. you will notice because if you've got them to a certain level of improvement, keep them there. Add Technon because it's going to help them. The body utilizes or eliminates
what it doesn't need.
Except for like vitamin E and things like that. But every 12 to 16 hours, it uses or evacuates virtually all the vitamins and minerals that you take in.
So you should keep whatever you're doing and add to it.
If it's working, keep doing it and add Technon to it, yes. You're not going to overdose them or create another problem with them because they have a shortage of it anyway. And there's not the amount of omega-3 that's in Technon is just what we as research scientists identified was the minimum that would be effective. Doesn't mean they don't need more, though. And there's one other thing. Some of the ingredients that are in Technon, we're a belief in that every natural plant-derived formula that anybody ingests, that they should be balanced. But most people are familiar that you can have 2 or 3 really good ingredients that taken by themselves do good for you. But if you combine them together, all of a sudden you've got a completely different formula, and now all of a sudden it's harmful to you. So what we do is we make sure that in Technon that everything is balanced so that each ingredient synchronizes with all the other ingredients and enhance their productivity, enhance what their effective, the area of effectiveness that they help create.
Yeah, so there's a balance between the components.
Every single ingredient balances out with every other ingredient. So sometimes we have to take less of an ingredient or more of an ingredient than would traditionally say that this is what you need. But that we have to do that to create a highly effective, natural plant-derived formula.
From South Africa and Pakistan, does Technon hold any certifications, especially for Muslim clients? Like, it's plant-based, right? So it's halal by default.
It is plant-based. We manufacture it in halal facilities. Okay. We have not gone to get the halal certification. And I will tell you that we do package it and do the final blending in the UAE.
So it's halal.
At a halal facility. But you know what? They told us in the United States to go get halal certification. It was going to take us like 9 to 12 months more.
So yeah.
I had enough. You know, I didn't do it. But I will say this. It is done at a halal facility, and all the ingredients are halal.
Okay. Are there any known interactions with medications like Ritalin or respiratory drugs that the children are on?
Not that we're aware of. Here's what I recommend to any of the parents of a child or a person that is on any form of medication. Monitor them minimum for the first 3 months and make sure there are no reactions that are different than what they're used to seeing. Okay, everybody's body is different. So some people may have a response. Most people aren't. To date, we know of none.
So keep doing whatever you're doing, just add...
And monitor it.
Yeah,
yes.
Technon on top.
Yeah. And when they see improvements starting to come with their doctor,
they can
monitor whether they need to reduce or because like take Ritalin as an example. That does other thing that's bad to you. So if they can reach a point to where they no longer need it, that's to the benefit of the child. Yes.
If my child has sensitivities to camel milk, because we've tried it before, is it safe to try Technon?
If your child is sensitive to camel milk, that means that because any ingredient there will be somebody out there that's allergic to some of the ingredients or one of the ingredients. Okay. If they're sensitive to camel milk and they've already been shown to be camel milk, now remember, this is a camel milk extract. Okay.
Not just pure camel milk.
Right. Of the colostrum in from a specific type of camel milk. However, I would recommend that you try it cautiously
and monitor.
And monitor it closely. And if they are able to do it, you know, without contraindications or out without the symptoms that they got before, then hallelujah. But be cautious. introduce it gradually and
Gradually.
slowly, okay, and see what the reaction is. The thing of it is most autistic children, if they're going to have an issue, it's to lactose, in cow milk.
Yeah.
Okay, camel milk has very little lactose and doesn't have the two poisons. I put those that exist in cow milk. But if the child, for whatever reason, if they are allergic to an ingredient in the camel milk, introduce it cautiously,
And slowly.
monitor it closely, and then use it or not use it depending on what you see the child's response is, regardless of age.
Regardless of age.
Yeah.
Technon is marked as an all-natural supplement, but some parents have concerns with certain ingredients like purple sweet potato, coloring, brown rice, especially with children with candida issues.
All the ingredients in Technon, all are natural, plant-derived, and plant-based that are safe for the consumption of all individuals that aren't allergic to them. Mm-hmm. All of the ingredients in Technon fall under GRAS, which stands for Generally Recognized as Safe. Now, as I said earlier, there's always somebody who's allergic to something, and I mean, it happens, okay? But there is nothing in Technon that isn't natural, plant-derived, and falls under the category of GRAS.
So one last question. We still have half of the questions, so we'll have a part 2. But there was an ad going all over social media that there is someone who is claiming to cure autism by genetic modification for children. So what do you have to say about that?
I don't believe it. I have done immense amounts of research in everything from stem cell treatment to genetic-based treatment. Now, when they say genetic-based, I take it that means gene therapy. I want to state unequivocally, be very careful. When you do gene therapy, some really bad things can happen also.
Yeah.
Okay? So until that's proven to me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'd be very, very cautious. And this is a good reason why people like that cause problems for those of us trying to communicate a factual, truthful message, why the parents don't believe what people say. I personally don't believe it. It would have to be proven to me, and I would be very cautious, because if it's gene therapy, some really serious repercussions can come from manipulating your genes.
Perfect. So stay tuned for part 2.